Okay, this is 140-160 class. So we're going to start with some jury charge warm-up. And this takes on Monday, so we will do some warm-up, some takes, and then our reader will be in it. You want me up there?
I tell you, like,
I know. It's kind of funny. Okay. Here we go. Members of the jury, you should carefully scrutinize all the testimony given the circumstances under which each witness has testified and every matter in evidence which tends to show whether a witness is worthy of belief. Consider each witness's intelligence, motive and state of mind, and demeanor or manner while on the stand. Consider the witness's ability to observe the matters as to which he has testified and whether he impresses you as having an accurate recollection of these matters. Consider also any relation each witness may bear to either side of the case, the manner in which each witness might be affected by the verdict, and the extent to which, if at all, each witness is either supported or contradicted by other evidence in the case. Inconsistencies or discrepancies in the testimony of a witness or between the testimonies of different witnesses may or may not cause the jury to discredit such testimony. Two or more persons witnessing an incident or a transaction may see or hear it differently, and innocent misrecollection, like failure of recollection, is not an uncommon experience. In weighing the effect of a discrepancy, always consider whether it pertains to a matter of importance or an unimportant detail, and whether the discrepancy results from innocent error or intentional falsehood. After making your own judgment, you will give the testimony of each witness such weight, if any, as you may think it deserves. Aha! Here's what I was looking for. Okay, so that was not too fast, so we're going to repeat it and go on. Members of the jury, you should carefully scrutinize all the testimony given the circumstances under which each witness has testified and every matter in evidence which tends to show whether a witness is worthy of belief. Consider each witness's intelligence, motive, and state of mind, and demeanor or manner while on the stand. Consider the witness's ability to observe the matters as to which he has testified and whether he impresses you as having an accurate recollection of these matters. Consider also any relation each witness may bear to either side of the case, the manner in which each witness may be affected by the verdict, and the extent to which, if at all, each witness is either supported or contradicted by other evidence in the case. Inconsistencies or discrepancies in the testimony of a witness between the testimonies of different witnesses may or may not cause the jury to discredit such testimony. Two or more persons witnessing an incident or a transaction may see or hear it differently. And innocent misrecollection, like failure of recollection, is not an uncommon experience. In weighing the effect of a discrepancy, always consider whether it pertains to a matter of importance or an unimportant detail, and whether the discrepancy results from innocent error or intentional falsehood. After making your own judgment, you will give the testimony of each witness such weight, if any, as you may think it deserves. You may, in short, accept or reject the testimony of any witness in whole or in part. Also, the weight of the evidence is not necessarily determined by the number of witnesses testifying to the existence or non-existence of any fact. You may find that the testimony of a small number of witnesses as to any fact is more credible than the testimony of a larger number of witnesses to the contrary. The law does not require any party to call as witnesses all persons who may have been present at any time or place involved in the case, or who may appear to have some knowledge of the matters in issue at this trial. Nor does the law require any party to produce as exhibits all papers and things mentioned in the evidence in the case. There are, generally speaking, two types of evidence from which a person or a jury may properly find the truth as to the facts of a case. One is direct evidence, such as the testimony of an eyewitness. The other is indirect or circumstantial evidence, the proof of a chain of circumstances pointing to the existence or non-existence of certain facts. As a general rule, the law makes no distinction between direct or circumstantial evidence, but simply requires that the jury find the facts in accordance with the preponderance of all the evidence in the case, both direct and circumstantial. The burden is on the plaintiff in a civil action such as this to prove every essential element of his claim by a preponderance of the evidence. However, defendant may in some instances bear the burden to prove certain facts. A preponderance of the evidence means such evidence as, when considered and compared with that opposed to it, has more convincing force and produces in your minds a belief that what is sought to be proved is more likely true than not true. In other words, to establish a claim by a preponderance of the evidence means to prove that the claim is more likely so than not so. This rule does not, of course, require proof to an absolute certainty, since proof to an absolute certainty is seldom possible in any case. In determining whether any fact in issue has been proved by a preponderance of the evidence, the jury may consider the testimony of all the witnesses, regardless of who may have called them, and all the exhibits received in evidence, regardless of who may have produced them. If the proof should fail to establish any essential element of the plaintiff's claim by a preponderance of the evidence, then the plaintiff has failed to carry his burden of proof by a preponderance of the evidence, and you must return a verdict for the defendant. When I say in these instructions that a party has the burden of proof on any proposition, or use the expression, if you find or if you decide, I mean you must be persuaded, considering all the evidence in the case, that the proposition is more probably true than not true. This is an action brought under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA makes it unlawful for an employer to intentionally discriminate against a qualified individual with a disability because of that person's disability. In this case, the plaintiff, Stephen Price, claims that the defendant, Interstate Trucking, Inc., intentionally discriminated against him because he had a disability or because defendant perceived him as having a disability. The defendant denies the claim. Maybe it's me because I'm just drinking my coffee, but it just feels like warm air's coming in. Okay, we're going to do some straight matter now. Oh, this is what I wanted to show. This stuff sometimes seems so dense. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, straight matter. Okay, I thought we had just done this one, but I guess not. Here we go. You will always remember your first time. I wasn't real clear about what actually had just occurred, but I did know that I was in terrible pain. I lay beside the Supercross track for at least 20 minutes, answering the questions of very eager emergency medical personnel. Leave me alone, I will be all right, I said to the medical guy that was tugging at my chest protector. If there is one thing that I cannot stand, it is 20 medical people trying to take all of your clothes off for a little cut or scrape. As I was put on a backboard and taken to the ambulance, I couldn't help wondering what had gone wrong. All I remember seeing was my body tumbling with my bike to an abrupt halt. I lay in the ambulance for what seemed like days. All I could hear were engines revving at high RPMs and the roar of the crowd when someone styled for the crowd. It was very disheartening to know that I was in the back of an ambulance at my first professional Supercross. The only thing I could do was play the past events over and over in my head. I couldn't believe it as I looked at the shiny gold and silver card. This card signified all of the rights and privileges of a professional supercrosser. Now I would have the right to race with the world's best. Dad, look, it finally came, I shouted. My dad looked at me with a silly grin and said, well, you knew it was coming. You won your 25th race last month. As I stood there with a smile bigger than the sun on my face, I said, I know, but I am still excited about it. Just think, I will be racing side by side with Damon Bradshaw and Kevin Windham. He just smiled and patted me on the back as I turned and walked to my room. I sat dreaming of the race I would enter next month. I had no idea what was in store for me at this particular event. As D-Day drew nearer, my mind overflowed with anticipation. I gathered my riding gear and my lucky Bart Simpson doll and headed out the door. I won my first race the day I sat my Bart Simpson on my handlebars between races. I have done it ever since to bring me good luck. The ride to Charlotte Motor Speedway was a trip that I thought would never end. As we entered the pit area, I was given a special pass to wear around my neck. I couldn't stop looking at the card that said Professional Supercross Rider. The pit was filled with racers walking around and talking to various people while their mechanics worked hard in the hope of bringing home a victory. I walked about, talking to a few people as I tried to get used to this new environment. My stomach felt like a squeezed orange when I heard the announcer say, is everybody ready to see the bad boys of Supercross? Well, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to hear the engines roar as 250 riders bring out their talent and go to work. When I heard this, I knew it was time to lay all the cards out on the table. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here comes the first 250 semifinal heat. The crowd came to their feet and roared like a pack of lions. I knew that they were mostly cheering for Damon, but I enjoyed being right next to him. The 30-second card went up and my stomach fell to the ground. I knew the gate would be dropping soon. I stared for what seemed like an eternity at the gate that was holding all of us back. With all of the skill I had, I tore off the start line the best that I could. As fast as I was in pro motocross, these guys left me like I was a rookie. Come to think of it, I was a rookie. The first race, I worked my way through the pack and settled into a 5th place spot. As I came upon the last lap, I was amazed at the size of the crowd watching this spectacular event. These people who paid good money to see us race. I felt proud just to be out there with these masters of Supercross. Okay, I made it. Here comes the final finish line double, I said. As I crossed this medium-sized jump, I laid the bike sideways in the air, and for the first time in my life, I had dozens of cameras flashing at me like stars in the dark sky. I rode slowly to the pit area where my father waited with a huge smile on his face. I can't believe you have done so well in your first Supercross event. I smiled and said, well, I still have to race the main event to really make my mark. I got off of my mechanical wonder and sat down to eat a banana. Apparently his accident happened in the next race.
Remember that one?
Yeah, it was from actually summer of 16. Okay, I'm going to give about 3 more minutes of some other straight matter. Here we go. The airline industry demonstrated consistent growth throughout the 1990s. Lower airfares due to slumping gas prices, coupled with an overall American economic boom, paved the way for these dramatic increases. At the same time, the brand new internet was making it easier for passengers and less expensive for airlines to coordinate ticket information. The industry was growing and becoming more efficient and profitable. The overall effect of these industry advances had a trickle-down benefit to all regional carriers as well. Regional carriers with smaller jets were making their way into smaller regional markets where larger airlines were less able to compete. Concerns that existed 20 years ago with regional airlines are all but erased now. The fleet of aircraft used by regional carriers can sustain the same speed and comfort traditionally owned only by the larger aircraft. More importantly, regional carriers can outperform the big airlines when it comes to the number of airports with which they can offer service. Passengers that fear a drop in safety when they board a regional airliner need not be afraid because on a per cycle basis, which is 1 takeoff and 1 landing, The regional airliners maintain a comparable safety record to the major airliners. Perceptions on aircraft reliability and pilot quality are also being dismissed. What's more, the perks that major airliners are offering are now being offered by regional carriers, such as granting frequent flyer miles to passengers. This has been great for promoting the industry. The growth that regional airlines exhibited in the 1990s was set back a little by the events of September 11th. The decline in passenger travel has left many jets half full. In order to be profitable, an airline must offer less scheduled departures or use smaller aircraft. Regional airlines have managed to sustain growth and compete with the major airlines despite having the disadvantages of scale, market share, and capital. The U.S. regional airline industry continued its impressive record of growth in 2001. According to an industry survey conducted, millions of passengers boarded airplanes operated by regional airlines, representing an increase of 10% over the previous year. Revenue passenger miles also increased. The evidence shows during the past 4 years that regional airlines are delivering the reliability, convenience, and safety expected by the traveling public. Safety as a whole in the airline industry is leaps and bounds ahead of other forms of transportation. You'd have to fly one flight a day for 27,000 years to be assured of being a fatal aviation statistic in the United States. However, airline statistics are difficult to break down. Dozens of different aircraft are grouped together with dozens of carriers who are then grouped with dozens of airports who are then grouped with dozens of countries. Other problems arise when you consider accident rates. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and do a 160 take. And this is a straight matter. Preview words. Actually, I'm going to start a different recording.